Welcome to Off the Rails, brought to you by the Model Railway YouTube community group, MRYCG, connecting the Model Railway community together. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course YouTube. Just search for MRYCG. Welcome to the July 2020 episode of Off the Rails by MRYCG. Over the last few days we have noticed that some of the outdoor venues are beginning to make preparations to reopen, so in the future we'll be looking to add an exhibition listing to our podcast too. So, what have we got coming up for you in this month's episode? Well, we have interviews, this month's news briefing, our live stream listing, which has had a few updates, so make sure you don't miss out on that. And of course, there's going to be fun, facts, news and chats. We also have the second episode of the brilliant Disaster Diaries hosted by James Cullen, which has proved very popular last month. So a big thank you to James for taking the time to do this for you. Last but not least, we'll be announcing who won Peaks 47 1000 subscriber giveaway. Right then, so jump aboard and let us take you on an hour's journey into episode 3. So hello and welcome to another interview here at the MRYCG Off the Rails podcast, and today I'm welcoming Sparky 107 all the way from lovely Canada. Hello Sparky.
Hello, Jason.
Tell us about whereabouts in Canada you are.
I am in southwestern Ontario. So if you're looking at a map, there's 5 Great Lakes that kind of wrap around each other, and I'm pretty much down as low as you can get.
You yourself are quite prominent in the model railroad scene over there in Canada. You do a lot of organisations and meets yourself. Unfortunately, obviously, due to the current situation of the global pandemic, that you had a meet that was arranged, but you've done some already that have been quite successful. Tell us about those.
Well, I did the YouTube meet and greet in Steamtown, Pennsylvania last year, and just over 100 people showed up for that. And it was just an awesome time to get to meet everybody that you watch on YouTube. It really makes it a personal experience then, right?
Were there any YouTubers that you gained to meet during those meetups that you find as an inspiration to yourself?
As an inspiration to myself, I guess Roy Smith from Panama, just to see what he can do with limited resources, and just an all-around amazing guy to watch. And actually with my YouTube meet and greets, I actually organize it with him because he comes up to Pennsylvania to meet his mother and spend a couple months in the Pennsylvania area. So.
And what did you find of the modelers that did turn up and excited to actually be meeting some of you quite well-known modelers over there?
Well, for the most part, I think we all became very friendly very quickly. And everybody was meeting everybody, and we all broke off into little groups basically before it all started. I did notice there was maybe 3 or 4 people that were very shy to come up towards me. I'm not quite sure why. I don't bite, but but ended up meeting everybody through it, and was just an awesome time for sure.
Now, you had one planned for May this year, but obviously due to the current situation that has had to be cancelled. Do you plan more in the future?
Now, the current situation in the world you're talking about, everybody over here, we call it the showstopper. Kind of nicknamed it that because it was when things first started closing down, and I was looking at my Strasbourg trip, which is the one you're talking about in Pennsylvania, and I thought, you know what, this is going to be a real showstopper for me because we're not going to get to make this. And I thought, well, I'm just going to call it the showstopper. And I don't know why, it caught on and took off from there. Everybody called it the showstopper afterwards.
And indeed, it does here. Everybody's call it the showstopper because exhibitions, meets, all that sort of stuff has all been basically stopped, which has been a bit of a drain, I think, on the community because, like with yourself and us over here, it is great to meet that modelling community face to face.
Oh, that it is. And to see how friendly everybody actually is.
Yeah, it's just that uniqueness to see that person on the screen or hear that person on the screen, but then finally meet the person in the flesh.
Well, Jason, as you probably can remember, model railroading was a closet hobby. If you did it, you didn't tell people, you didn't have people come over and look at it. Maybe kids saw it and thought it was great. I'm almost 50 years old and I'm just starting another layout in a shed that I built just for it. So to make the YouTube meet and greets, it's not, you find out very quickly, it's not a closet hobby anymore. A lot of people are out there and they want to share it, and YouTube's just the beginning of it. So
I suppose the YouTube meet and greets is probably, in this day and age, another form of guys at railway stations or railroad stations meeting up with the pens and paper, making notes of the trains and things like that. It's just taken it into a new generation and made it more appealing to the wider generation as well.
and it's a family event too. So it's nice if they bring their kids and their wives and stuff along and kind of open it up even more.
Yeah, more of a family affair.
Correct.
The meet and greets, they do go quite wide and beyond, because yourself, you've been over here to the UK and you've been involved in meet and greets here in the UK. How did you find that as any difference between the ones that you have over the pond, as they say, to how they are portrayed here in the UK?
Okay, so being at the meet and greet that you guys had over there for Matt Slate, I thought was awesome. The only difference I really saw in it is I think the UK has more of a modeler base, more people involved than North America does. Maybe it's a capita, I'm not sure what I'm trying to say. But I had 100 people show up to mine, and when we got to yours, there was 15, 20 people. And I really thought yours would have been a lot bigger.
If you were to come back over here in the UK, is it something you'd still like to do again?
Well, as you know, because we've been planning this for a bit, I am planning on coming back over to the UK. But the other thing I want to kind of put that wrapped around is the Matt Slade get together again. So I'd love to take part in that again. Through you and through Matt, we'll kind of organize a time that I can get there for that one.
Okay, so on with the questions, Sparky. Have you built any previous home layouts?
Well, I did have one when I first got married. It's probably going back 20 years ago. And I did 2 4x8 sheets of plywood, put them up on legs, and did a big oval on it. That was my first layout. And from here, obviously, I did have one in my basement here. Well, I guess I had 2 in my basement here.
Now, going on about the basement, actually, you had some issues regarding your layouts in the basement.
The issue you're talking about was a flood that I had. And I'll never have that again. There's no holes in the basement anymore. So nothing will ever get flooded out. But I just kept finding myself wanting to go a bit bigger. And then the shed just kind of appeared in my backyard somehow.
And if anybody has actually seen any of Sparky's videos, especially since the shed has been completed in construction, when he says bigger, yeah, it is bigger. Much bigger.
It's the actual layout area is 35 by 12.
And on 3 levels.
Well, the layout's on 3 levels, yeah.
So next question. At what age did you first get involved in model railroads, and what inspired you to do so?
Well, the age part of it, I was probably 7 or 8, and my dad got me one for Christmas. He set it up in the basement. He played with it. I got to watch it. That's how that kind of started. After he got, I guess, bored with it, never seen it again. And then the next time is when I started going to high school in St. Thomas. I had to walk across a set of railroad tracks every day to get to school. And it was a Conrail yard. It had probably 25 tracks across, and always 3 beautiful GP7s sitting in there, just running all the time, just idling. And I fell in love with them. And then I started watching them, hanging around the tracks. And then, of course, kind of snowballed from there.
And you mentioned there Conrail. That's actually your favourite livery, is that correct?
That's the only livery.
Yes, if anyone doesn't know Conrail, it's very blue.
They're known as Big Blues, and it's how do you say it? The railroads that are gone. Oh, it's a fallen flag. So,
What was your first train or train set?
well, the first train set that got me hooked now would be the Overland Express. And that's one that Amy kind of got me for Christmas. And I put that together on the floor, ran it around about 3 times, went to the computer and ordered 3 more train sets.
What is your favourite part of the layout build so far?
I'd have to say my Helix right now, just because I think that's 9 levels behind me. I'd have to count it again, though. But I can run 4 trains at a time, and all 4 of them can be in that Helix. And to sit here and watch that is amazing.
What do you love doing most in a layout build?
Now, the best thing I like about a layout build is to actually have a train running. So my whole layout is a big loop, basically. On my track, on all 3 levels right now is temporary, except in my corners and my Helix. And the whole reason for that is as long as I have a train running, and I can spend hours out here working on this layout, scenery, track, everything. And it almost makes me feel like a maintenance of way crew type thing. When you're working away at something and all of a sudden the train comes by, you have to stop, watch it, take your time. And for me, it's kind of a grasp of a way to take your time doing your layout, because you have to stop, think about things. So that's my favorite thing to say, is just having trains running.
Now, a question I'd follow on with that. Do you find yourself distracted by the trains running while trying to work on the railroad?
Actually, I don't. Like I said, I could have the train running for me to do something, and I could be doing track work, and all of a sudden that train will run into my hand, and it'd be like, oh man. But again, it makes me take the time to stop, think about what's going on, really have a good look at it.
Are you a railway modeller? Do you have an interest in that new technology of 3D printing? Want to see what's involved? Then don't miss out on the new video series by TimberServe, all about designing and 3D printing for model railways, called Draw and Print 3D. Available now on TimberServe's YouTube channel.
What era would you say your layout is based on,
1980s to 1990s.
and why?
That's basically when I had to cross those tracks to go to high school. And I guess Conrail in early 2000s, that's when it was dissolved into CSX in Norfolk Southern. I did that every day, twice a day, 4 times a day or whatever. And there's even a little green building that was at the end of the tracks of the rail yard. And I could not figure out at all what that green building was for until I finally went onto a forum. And one person in that forum said, oh, I remember that green building. That was the crew lounge for crew changes. So I actually went out and bought the thing and got it all painted up. It's on my layout now too. But it was actually a building that was so far off of the yard work that unless you really took note of the whole yard, you don't remember it. Like I said, in that forum, only one person remembered that building.
Is the layout based on a fictional location or a real location?
I am hoping that the whole layout will be a real location. The name of my layout is Conrail, a Canadian division, and I want to do it from when it crosses from Detroit all the way to where it crosses at Niagara Falls. So it goes right through the southwestern part of Ontario, and I do have a book on it, so I want to actually do all the cities or towns that it hit, all the industries that it hit, try to make it as prototypical as I can, but obviously it's got to be fictional at the same time because none of us have that much room. So
that would explain then why you've got the 3 levels, because you've got such a long distance of that line to cover in the layout itself.
Yeah, but my whole top level is nothing more than trains running. That's it. And that's, people said that's kind of stupid, but I look at it this way: is that's, some people have what's the staging yards, hidden staging yards?
Fiddle yards.
Well, mine's gonna, yeah, well, over here it's staging.
Yeah.
But you got fiddle yards. But yeah. But my 3rd level is going to represent when a train actually leaves my area and then comes back, because it's just running in scenery. That's it.
Is there any part of that layout that you'd look at now, regret doing, but will in time return and redo?
Not yet, but it's really early still. So
How about any previous layout?
no, actually, it's the opposite for me. My very first layout that I had in the basement had a part of a track that it went over top of itself like a crazy 8. And I wish there was a way I could recreate that on this layout, but I just don't have the width to do it. It was the same train. I've had a couple of videos real early on YouTube where you see the train come in, it goes around a big loop, and it starts going up a hill, and then goes over itself, and then goes back down and follows itself, and now it's beside itself. So it's an up and down scene on both sides. And I just thought that was awesome. But like I said, I can't recreate that. So
Maybe an expansion for the future then.
yeah, another shed? No.
Of your rolling stock and locos then, of the locos that you currently own, which one is your ultimate favourite?
Okay, that's pretty easy actually. It's the GP38, Conrail Blue, obviously. And just at the late 80s, I think, is a lot of GP38s ran the line. So I'd see 3, 4, 5 of them pulling long trains.
And how about rolling stock?
Rolling stock boxcars are my favorite. The reason for that is because now you have container trains, and I'd rather see a boxcar than a bunch of containers.
Do you have a particular one out of all that you've got that you like ultimately the best?
Yeah, I actually have a couple with Casio on the side of them, Caso, C-A-S-O, and that's Canada Southern. And that's actually the line that I'm basing my whole layout off of, which was early 1900s when it was actually built.
So not only are featuring the locos from the region, you are also featuring the rolling stock that would have been pulled by those locos?
Yes and no. The rolling stock of those boxcars wouldn't run at the era that I have. They're more of a 1940s boxcar, but they could still sit in the yard.
Of your current layouts you've built, they've all been like home layouts, either in the basement or now in the shed. Have you ever considered building an exhibition layout that you could take out for the public to see?
Not one that I could take out, but we do have a group here that goes around house to house once a year, and it's a layout tour. And I was hoping to be part of that this year, but because of the showstopper, that got canceled. So
you've got your favourite loco, you've got your favourite rolling stock, but is there any loco or rolling stock that's not yet been produced that you would like to see produced by a manufacturer?
the one locomotive I'd really like to see manufacturers do more of, because I'm pretty sure they are out there, but they're really expensive, is the Class 68s.
Now
I know I'm Canadian and everything, but when I did spend some time in the UK, that was one I fell in love with.
Now, you did have the joy of getting a loco, which you find as probably your favourite UK-based locomotive, didn't you, when you were over here in the UK?
Class 37?
A good old tractor.
Yeah, to me, they look like Droopy the dog, if anybody can remember the cartoon. And I don't know why, but it just comes across like that for me. And the sound of them, like a tractor for sure, when it's rolling by, and it's just, oh, wow.
And luckily enough, the one you did purchase was actually a sound-fitted one. So have we been blessed with seeing it yet out on the current layout?
It has been on this layout, but I'm not sure I've done video of it yet.
Maybe something we'll see for the future. And I'm sure it'll be a few shockers for your audience.
Yeah, more than likely. I was actually thinking about it last night, putting it on the track, but I've had to rip up part just off the end of my helix there. So I'm in the process of fixing that all up.
So just a few more questions for you, Sparky. This one probably goes back to your younger years with your answer, and that's, what's your thoughts on bringing the younger generation into the hobby?
Well, YouTube's a big help in that. In one matter of speaking, the problem with that, and this has to be 13 or older to watch videos, or their kid videos and such, I think is putting a really bad line for our hobby. So it's kind of hard to get the kids because we want them. And again, I think that's got to be done through families, open houses, people visiting, holidays, things like that. So
yes, getting the more family orientations involved and getting the parents to introduce them to the model railways then would be a positive.
See, a little trick I have is friends and stuff that we have, and at Christmas time I'll go out and buy 2 train sets, and then I'll give them to their, hopefully it plants a seed and gets them hooked.
So there we go with the main questions to put forward to you, Sparky, and thank you very much for your wonderful answers and insight into how you yourself and the layouts have progressed over the lifetime. But we're going to finish off with the 3 quickfire questions. These are non-model railway related questions, but just gives us a little tiny of insight into the person behind the layout. So are you ready for your quickfires?
Okay, fire away, Jason.
Okay, so we fire away with question 1 for you. Question 1 is, what is your favourite beverage?
Iced tea.
Question 2, what is your favourite snack?
Ooh, chips.
Chips, yeah, we call them crisps.
Yeah.
And the 3rd and final one is, what is your favourite all-time TV show?
TJ Hooker.
Great answers there. So yes, there is a little tiny insight into the life and modelling of Sparky 107. Before we do go though, please tell us all, where can we find you?
On YouTube is the quickest way to find me, and Sparky 107. But Wednesday nights, I guess it's at midnight for you guys.
Here
I do the Wednesday night live chat.
Yeah. So it's 7 p.m. Eastern, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
So that's for us here in the UK, it is midnight UK time. So thank you very much, Sparky 107. Yes, check him out on YouTube. Make sure you do subscribe, obviously, and follow up on his Wednesday night live chats, because they are absolutely hilarious at times, but can be serious and fun as well. So thank you very much for joining us. Until next time, it's bye from me. Thank you.
See you later, guys.
Don't forget you can also find us on Twitter at MRYCG_official.
Are you looking to add a nice new addition to your layout? Then make sure you take a look at the MRYCG's very own marketplace to buy, sell or swap your second-hand items and collectibles. You'll find a wide range of locos, scenery and track, not to mention books, die-cast models and lots of highly collectible railway honour that you just cannot afford to miss. Are you looking for a certain item? Then why not place a wanted advert in your listings, as someone may just have that tucked away. Or maybe you have an item to sell yourself to be given a fresh lease of life in a new home. You'll find items in all scales and gauges at prices to suit your budget. So go on, why not take a look in the marketplace today? Find us on Facebook, hit that search bar and type in MRYCG Marketplace. Buy, sell, swap model railways.
Hi everyone, this is Tim from FMR Station House, aka Family Model Railway. You are listening to Off the Rails with the MRYCG.
And now for your MRYCG monthly news briefing for July 2020. There is great news for Model Village and miniature railway fans this month, as outdoor venues are being allowed to start reopening, with the public asked to observe social distancing during their visit. Beckinscott Model Village in Buckinghamshire will open its gates again on July the 6th, for visitors that have booked a time slot in advance using the venue's website. Please check out other Model Railway Village websites for further information, and most importantly, stay safe, observe the rules and enjoy some well-earned family days out this summer. The Gloucestershire and Warwickshire Steam Railway have announced that the emergency embankment appeal has exceeded all expectations. They have raised in excess of £250,000 that was needed to go ahead with the repairs, says the Trust chairman Glyn Cornish. Services will be restarting on Saturday the 15th of August, running to a limited timetable. All travel will need to be pre-booked. Please visit gwsr.com. Worley Model Railway Club have announced that the 2020 exhibition has unfortunately been cancelled, with concerns of public safety due to the coronavirus. Exhibition manager Neil Smith said in a statement that close interaction is part of the experience, and social distancing measures will mean that we cannot interact with fellow enthusiasts as we would wish to. Safety for our visitors, exhibitors and club members is paramount. We will be working behind the scenes to deliver a fantastic show next time. Tickets purchased for this event will be accepted to be used for the 2021 show. For more information, please visit theworleyshow.co.uk. Scale Model Scenery have been in the process of moving their business to a much larger premises. Justin, Tina and the team made the decision to relocate their business to a larger warehousing and production facility in the southwest of England. Justin, the managing director, said, "We'd originally planned to be back in business by the 6th of July 2020. Everything went according to plan. All lasers and 3D printers are firing on all cylinders, so we're now officially back in production. We would like to express our gratitude to all our customers for the patience and understanding during our relocation process." For more information about Scale Model Scenery and their vast array of products, please check out scaleModelScenery.co.uk. Hello and welcome to this latest interview with a modeller. Today we've got Jenny Kirk. Hello Jenny and welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you doing?
So it's an absolute pleasure to have you here, Jenny. We know you are very big in the modelling scene at the moment with all your shows and helping out with many reviews on products, but we've got you here to get a little bit of an insight into you and your modelling and your model railways. So I'm going to crack on straight away with the questions, Jenny. First of all, how long has your current layout, Wear Yard, been under construction?
I started it probably, I can remember coming up here into what was just a completely empty loft. It may be January, end of January last year, so that'd be 2019. I sometimes get nicknamed the Queen of Speed Modelling because I work quite quickly. I guess part of that is impatience. It's like I want something to play with. I need to get this finished. But I built most of what you see on Wear Yard probably over 6 months.
As you stated there, you come up into the loft to build Wear Yard. Now, you were in a shed, so that is another layout that you had. How many layouts have you actually built over the course of your modelling career?
I'm trying to think now. In terms of what people would recognise as a kind of, in inverted commas, a proper model railway, I guess I'm up to about 7 or 8, something like that.
That's quite an achievement then.
Yeah, I suppose so. I've never really thought about it. You kind of focus on the layout in front of you, and quite often I've built a new layout mostly because of a change in circumstances, like a bigger space presents itself. But also, I remember my very first layout, I fell into all of the little pitfalls. Anything that I could have done wrong, I did wrong, from ropey baseboards that sagged and made the layout all like corrugated washboard, making a mess with the scenery. And actually, I used so much water in the plaster that it never fully dried and it actually went moldy underneath. So, you kind of, it became a learning process. And then I got more space in terms of having a spare room that I could build something in the house where we were renting. And that allowed me to build something new. And then when we moved here, it had a big garden shed. And again, that was one stage bigger. And I thought, this is great. I can have a much bigger layout. So I built stuff in there. And then, of course, once I discovered that the loft was completely empty, it was, the gloves were off. It's like, I'm having this space.
Was the layout in the shed the same layout or a name, or is Weir Yard a completely new layout then from that one?
Wear Yard is completely new. Every layout that I build tends to be very different. It's almost like I'm trying to get prototypes out of my system. In terms of the shed layout that I had here, at the time I very much wanted to build a model of Bolton Trinity Street Station. I'd become quite fascinated with how the station had changed over the decades. And also, there were some childhood memories, which would have been from the very early 1980s of the area, and some of the structures that are no longer there. And I just felt I really wanted to build that. But once I'd done that, it's kind of like you scratch the itch, you erase the need. It's like, well, I've done that. I want to move on. So when I came up into the loft, I really wanted to be able to build my homage to Tyne Marshalling Yard, because when I'd lived up in the northeast, I'd commuted to Newcastle every single day. And I remember being quite fascinated by Tyne Marshalling Yard as you looked out of the train as we went past. Because I had a very distinctive control tower in the middle, and you could see the hum and the different sidings and the way that there were like flyovers for certain tracks, and it just seemed very intricate. And I got this idea that it would be really nice to make such a yard, because effectively what you're making is a glorified fiddle yard, but I've made it scenic. And it was just this idea of, why not make the fiddle yard scenic and maximise the amount of layout.
Well, you're just on about your childhood and obviously the yard. What era would that then actually be based on?
It tends to oscillate between different periods. My main love is BR Blue with tops numbers. So I always say probably late 1970s into early 1980s. And I'm not really quite sure why. I think the idea of the top system appeals to my OCD. It's very neat and precise, and I like that. But I do have a lot of rolling stock that I've collected over the years for different periods. So occasionally I'll just change everything that's on the layout. And I like to build a layout that doesn't necessarily scream a very finite period, so that I can sometimes just have a day where I think, you know what, I just want to run pre-grouping, or I want to run BR era stock. And it's sometimes, it's nice to have a change.
What is your favourite loco that you currently own then? Is it a BR loco?
Oh gosh, that's a really difficult one. If I had to pick a single locomotive, my favourite actually is the Brighton H1 Atlantic in London, Brighton and South Coast livery that Bachmann brought out. And there's just something aesthetically very beautiful about that locomotive in that livery. But it's very much this kind of outlier. It doesn't really fit with what I model. I just looked at it and thought, you know what, it's just such a pretty loco. I really want that.
How about rolling stock?
I really like 16-ton mineral wagons, and I know that occasionally if people watch things like the Monday Club and some of my train running videos, they'll occasionally see this huge rate of Bachmann 16-ton mineral wagons.
So taking you back now, Jenny, back to your younger years, at what age would you say you first got involved with model railways and what actually inspired you to do so?
I was probably, I've got a very early memory, which I can place to being sometime up to the age of 3 years old. I can't quite remember exactly how old I would have been, but really it was my father. He was looking for an excuse to get his model railway that he'd had as a child out of the lot. And I was the one who took the bait. I just found it quite fascinating. It was Hornby 003 rail, and he'd lay it out on this. I still remember the table. It was like a horrible 1970s blue and white melamine covered table, and he'd lay it out on that, and he'd be like, get them running. And I was only small, and I'd peer over the edge of the table, and occasionally my hand would sort of reach out and go, no, Daddy will show you how it works. And then my mum would come to the door and go, I hope you're letting them have a go. Yeah, just showing them how it works. And I was probably about 5 or 6 years old before I actually got a go with it. But I just remember it being magical. I loved railways from that age through watching my father playing with his Hornby 00.
What do you love doing most in a layout build then, Jenny?
Again, another very difficult question. I love the creativity of making scenery. I'm not entirely sure which bit of that I like best. I also like ballasting. I know a lot of people despise doing ballasting, but I quite find it quite relaxing. Your little paintbrush, you just kind of shuffle along. I'll put something on the telly or a bit of music on, and I find that a brilliant way of de-stressing. I think it's probably easier to say the things that I hate doing. I hate doing electrics, but everything else, I think, it's nice when you build a model railway to maybe do a bit of scenery and then after a while maybe do a bit of ballasting and then go on to making some trees. And you kind of do different things depending on your mood. But I do quite like it all, apart from the electrics.
Hello, Tim Serve here, with a little reminder to sign up to my channel on YouTube for your weekly dose of Timber Serve's Bits. Ciao for now.
The script says subscribe, not sign up. As it'll do.
So, Jenny, you've been into the hobby since your younger years, but what would you say was your first ever train or train set you bought personally yourself?
The one that sticks in my mind is when I got into my teenage years, I discovered things like music, and I went to work in radio eventually, but I became really engrossed in music, the hot new bands, and just finding different records and stuff. And back then, you had to physically go and dig through record shops. There was no internet. So I kind of lost interest in model railways, probably right through until my early 20s after university. And at the time I was working freelance into places like the BBC, Granada, and I can remember walking past a model shop. It was actually Bolton Model Mart, and in the window they had some of the Hornby X-Dapol Pug locomotives, and I just remember seeing it, and this little light bulb moment happened in my head, and I rediscovered model railways. And I suddenly realized it's this epiphany moment when I realized, hold on, I've got a good job. I've got a bank account and a bank card. I don't need to ask anybody's permission to buy this. I could just walk into that shop and buy what I want. And I remember going in there and it's like, I want that one, the one in the window, I'll have it. And I remember buying it, and just it kind of in that moment, I rediscovered this hobby that had been put on the back burner for so many years.
So moving forward then, throughout your hobby, what would you say has been your proudest moment or achievement within the hobby to date?
It's probably going to be Great Model Railway Challenge, because we got all the way through to the final. And although we had a lot of difficulties, I'd always felt like we were the underdogs in that. The fact we got through to the final and got to build 3 layouts in such a great environment. I mean, if you ever get a chance to go and visit Fawley Hill, it's well worth visiting that place. And I just felt really proud, especially when I got told how many people had applied to be on Great Model Railway Challenge. Then they'd whittled it down and whittled it down. And actually to be chosen to be deemed like, well, you're not going to just sort of sit there and not be able to do anything. You're going to actually build something. it kind of felt like that was the moment where somebody else said, yes, your model making is good enough. And, I was just really proud of what I managed to achieve with that. And even now, when I look at some of the photographs, I think, God, we built that in a matter of a couple of days. How did we do that? And I think as a modeler as well, I learned more during the filming of that than in my entire lifetime, because you're thrown together with so many other really talented people and you're forced to actually achieve things. So whereas before you might have looked at it and thought, oh, I don't feel confident enough to do that, you just had to do it. It was a case of suck it and see. And what I actually found was I was able to do far more than I'd ever given myself credit to do. And I think everything that I've modeled since then has been so much better because of that experience.
Taking you back now to rolling stock, what would you like to see produced for the first time?
Oh, it's not strictly for the first time it's ever appeared ready to run, but the Crestwind Silo wagon is one which I wouldn't mind seeing to modern standards. It did appear briefly in the Hornby 00 range in the 1960s, not long before they went bankrupt. So it kind of came and then it went. And as far as I know, it didn't reappear in any other range. I know a lot of the wagons carried over into the Wren range, and then also Daypol ended up making a load. But as far as I'm aware, the Crestwind Silo never reappeared. I know that Bachmann did announce that they were going to do it, and then I think they've kind of put it to one side and it's not going to appear. But I would love to see that wagon appear in model form.
Is there any locomotive that you feel that has not been produced yet, but should be?
Yeah, I mean, there's loads actually. A lot of people, I know people say, oh, well, we've never had it so good. They're going to run out of prototypes to model. And all I can think is, no, they won't. Because, when you look at how many different locomotives from all of the different railway companies there were, there's so many quirky things that I guess most people have probably never heard of, like the J92, which I think was a Northeastern Railway 060 tank locomotive. But quite early on, they were converted to be a crane tank for use in the works. So they became this very peculiar contraption in that they physically had a crane on for lifting stuff. And they lasted through into, I think it was the 1950s. And something as unique as that, you look at some of the kind of quirky prototypes that are now starting to get made, and you think, why have we never seen a crane tank? So I guess, a J92 would be high on that list.
So taking things away from the actual layout, wear yard and your own model making, we want to look a bit towards the younger generation now. Jenny, what are your thoughts on actually the younger generation being brought into the hobby?
I think it can only be a good thing. The hobby needs new people coming in. Otherwise, what will eventually happen is effectively the hobby will die out. We need the new generation to keep the hobby going. And actually, from a selfish point of view, keep it financially viable. If there's less and less of us, then models are going to be less and less viable. And I think that in recent times, what things such as Great Model Railway Challenge have shown is that you can fire up the imagination of the new generation by doing things like that. And I guess the one thing that series, I keep hearing time and time again, has done is it's brought new people into the hobby. And I know that some of the rivet counting aficionados, for want of a better expression, have maybe turned their nose up at that and gone, oh, no, this is just not taking the hobby seriously. But it's brought people in. Exhibition managers were saying that turnouts were up. They were getting more families in, more young people in. Model shops are saying that younger people are coming in and saying, I saw this program. It really made me think, I can do this. I want to do this. And it's done wonders for the hobby. And I think by showing what can be achieved creatively, even on a very limited budget. So maybe using materials that are quite cheap, quite ready to hand, and showing people, look, you can make great countryside doing this. You don't need to spend a lot of money. It makes the hobby accessible again to a new generation. And I think that is important. The hobby will die if we don't get youngsters interested.
Yeah, and the shows like the Great Model Railway Challenge have shown that the hobby, it's got its serious side, but it's also still maintains its fun side, and that's the bit that the children,
Yeah.
the younger generation, need to cling on to, because it is fun.
Yeah, and also it's a lot of transferable skills, and I think maybe a lot of people don't quite realise that if you have a very creative hobby like railway modelling, it teaches you so many different skills that you can then take on into everyday life.
Okay, so the last of the questions now for you, Jenny, and this one, it's how useful do you find online social media and forums are towards providing modelling information for the current modelling generation?
I think they are very, very useful. I know that online there is a toxic element out there, but it's very much in the minority. I think the vast majority of people on social media, on Facebook groups, on internet fora are actually really useful and really great. I've made a lot of friendships with like-minded people through these groups, but also found out how to do things. I'm old enough to remember what the world was like before the internet. And, if you wanted to figure out how to do a particular thing in railway modelling, it could actually be quite difficult. If you weren't a member of a model railway club, you didn't know anybody to ask. A lot of it was just a case of you had to do trial and error. And in a lot of instances, never found out about some great products that actually were just what you needed. Now you don't have that. You go on an internet forum and say, I'm wanting to make X. And then you'll have people say, oh, actually, yeah, this is how you do it. And then here's a really easy way of doing it. And actually, if you try this and this great product, you'll get a really effective result. And it's never been better to be able to find out how to do things. And, I think that the hobby as a whole is much richer.
Well, thank you very much for that fabulous insight into your modelling history, your modelling currently, and what may be coming for the future, Jenny. But before you go, we've got one little last thing for you to do, and this is something we like to do with the modellers at the end of each interview, and it's the quick fire round. Everybody that we interview has been featured in this, and there's a really nice array of different answers coming from each and every modeller that's been interviewed so far, and it's quite an interesting insight. It's a little bit of a personal insight behind the modeller to what they like to get up to, as we say, or like to enjoy, even maybe while they are doing their modelling. So the quickfire questions are non-model railway related. So we're going to fire straight in with question 1, Jenny, and that is, what is your favourite beverage?
Creme de banane.
Question 2, what is your favourite snack?
Crisps.
And the final question, question 3, what is your favourite all-time TV show?
Probably Frasier.
Thank you very much, Jenny. Some fabulous answers to those questions, giving us that little tiny bit of a background insight into Jenny Kirk. So again, thank you very much, Jenny, for taking the time to be in with this interview. Before you go, just tell us, where can we find you?
You can find me on YouTube if you do a search for Jennifer E. Kirk, and also you can find me on Facebook. Again, do a search for Jennifer E. Kirk and you'll find me there.
Thank you very much. So thank you to everyone for tuning in and listening to this interview. Make sure you stay tuned for more interviews coming very soon. So thank you very much, Jenny, for joining me.
Thank you.
And until next time, take care, stay safe, and keep on modelling.
Thanks. Bye for now.
Welcome to the monthly live stream listings. During each episode of Off the Rails, we will be sharing a selection of regular live streams that you may be interested in. A number of model railway enthusiasts have taken the steps to connect the model railway community together by hosting regular streams that are free to watch, take part in and socialise. All the following times are listed in UTC and are hosted on YouTube unless stated otherwise. Monday, 7 PM, Jenny Kirk with the Monday Club. Midnight, Tyadan Valley Railroad and Coal Company. Tuesday, 2 AM, Tom's Trains and Things. 8 PM, Barnabas Junction with YouTube Tuesday in association with MRYCG. On Track Tuesday will be hosted at midnight, Indian Head Valley Railroad on the first week of the month. Redbird Tony 2010 on the second week of the month. Creative Rails on the 3rd week of the month, Crooked River and Eastern on the 4th week of the month. Wednesday, 8:30pm, FMR Station House with the Workbench Wednesday show. 11pm, Schuylkill River Valley on the 2nd week of the month. 11pm, D and RGW Iron Horse Route, also on the 2nd week of the month. Midnight, Sparky 107 107 with the Wednesday night live chat. Thursday, 2am, Michael McCarville. Midnight, Hot Rod Rodney. Friday, 6pm, Anfield Road, Layout in the Loft. 8pm, MRYCG with Facebook Friday, a model railway live chat show hosted in their official group on Facebook. Saturday, 1am, BNSF 6951. 3pm, Back on Track. 8pm, The Rosemary Line with the Model Railway Community Show. 8:30pm, The Mass Debaters, a model railway chat channel on the first Saturday of every month. This show may contain sensitive topics and language. It is strictly advised to be for over 18s. 9pm, West Hill Wagon Works. Sunday, 9pm, Oak Hill Model Railway. 9pm, Owens Model Railway with streaming Sunday. All times may be subject to change at the presenter's decision. For the latest and up-to-date show information, or if you would like your live stream listed, then please visit mrycg.com/livestream schedule.
Feeling a bit clicky with those photos? Then why not check us out on Instagram? Just search MRYCG Official.
Are you struggling with ideas for your layout? Is your model railway looking tired? Or maybe you're hoping to grab yourself a bargain? Then visit Malk's Models at Ilkeston, Nottingham and Derbyshire's #1 model shop. They offer a huge range of new and pre-owned models, accessories and all the scenics you'll ever need. There is also a good stock of almost every paint you may require to make your models look authentic too. Visit the store today on Pelham Street, Ilkeston, Derbyshire, DE7 8AR. Or call Malk for a friendly chat on 07786 896 807.
Hello, I'm James Cullen, and welcome to this month's edition of Disaster Diaries. 22nd of May 1915. The First World War is still in its infancy, and some think it will be over by Christmas. The two world wars both had impacts on the railways. It could even be said that without the railways, there couldn't have been any wars in the first place, but that's a discussion for another day. The reason it's important for you to know that Britain was at war at the time is that most things moved for and by the Ministry of Defence were done by rail. Trains used by the military were treated like the Royal Train. They were top priority. They should not be stopped, and everything else had to be moved aside to let them through. The railways had been placed under government control and were effectively now nationalised for the duration. This allowed for any stock and loco to be used anywhere on the network on any job. This includes rolling stock that might otherwise have been put to work on a more sedentary branch line, not hurtling along the main lines, conveying troops, tanks and everything else in between. So, let's set the scene. It's May the 22nd, 1915, and we're at Quinton-Shill. For those who don't know, it's located about half a mile north of Gretna, between Carlisle and Glasgow, on what is now the West Coast Main Line. It's Saturday morning, and at 3:45am, a battalion from the 7th Royal Scots Regiment depart Lambert. It's a little place just outside Falkirk. Their destination was Liverpool. The train was formed of 15 former Great Central wooden-bodied, non-corridor coaches, 14 of them still using gas lighting, and the tanks would have been filled so the soldiers on board could see to their seats before setting down for the long journey south. The train also consisted of 6 Caledonian wagons and vans filled with munitions and arms, including the brake van. These coaches wouldn't normally be used for a run such as this, but it was wartime. As we mentioned earlier, every item of stock available was put to work. The train would go as far as Carlisle, where the locomotive would be changed. The loco on this morning was a Caledonian Macintosh 440, number 121. As the 7th Royal Scots clattered south, 2 overnight sleeper trains from Euston, the 23:45 to Edinburgh and Aberdeen, and the midnight to Glasgow, were both roaring north. They're set to leave Carlisle at 5:50 and 6:05 respectively. They would then be followed by the 6:10 local train to Beatock. The loco was known as a parley, parliamentary train, an inexpensive service for less affluent passengers that must run at least once a day. This local Parley train connected with an important service from Beatock to Glasgow, so it was kept to time as much as was possible. If the sleeper trains were running late, the local would depart on time and then be looped at either Quintinshill or Kirkpatrick. Normal practice was to sit the local in the down loop at Quintinshill until both expresses had passed it. This is how things should have been done on a normal day. Quintinshill today is much the same as it was 105 years ago, although the signal box is now gone. Two main lines are flanked by loops on the up and down, with a set of trailing points connecting the main lines halfway along the length of the loops. The signal box was sited directly in front of these points on the up line side. Take note, the up line goes to Carlisle and the down runs north to Glasgow. So up goes south and down goes north. The men on duty that morning were James Tinsley and George Meakin. The signalman worked 2 shifts lasting 10 hours each, and a relief man would cover the remaining 4. Shift change was always at 6 a.m. Both men lived in Gretna, so it was easy for them to cycle or walk to work. However, it was not unusual for them to hop on the local and have a free lift to work. The problem is, this means they would be half an hour late for booking on every morning. So the night shift man would complete the train register up to 6 a.m. and then make notes on bits of paper. This was so the day shift man could copy information into the register in his own handwriting, and it wouldn't be found out if anyone inspected the book. As far as anyone knew, the day man always arrived at 6 a.m. Unfortunately, on the morning of the 22nd of May 1915, the sleepers from Euston, a local coal train, and James Tinsley were all running late. I cannot describe what happened next any better than Jack Richards and Adrian Searle did in their book, The Quintinshill Conspiracy. So I shall now read an excerpt from it to you. George Meakin, nearing the end of a tiring 10-hour night shift, had reached a decision. The express trains from London were important. The local train, very much less so. It was time for the party to be shunted aside, to yield to the express's superior status. As well as prioritising military traffic, signalmen were under strict instructions, war or no war, to give fast-moving passenger trains a considerable degree of precedence in all but the most exceptional of circumstances. They risked disciplinary action if they failed regularly to do so. There was nothing to warrant an exception on Saturday, the 22nd of May 1915. That, at least, was the way it seemed to the men on the railway's own front line that morning. Given the pressure he was under not to delay the progress of the overnight expresses, George Meakin's decision was perfectly understandable, but it would turn out to be crucial to the shattering events that were to transpire in a very short space of time. Meakin would stop the local train outside a signal box. It would have to wait its turn in the procession northwards at this remote spot, Quintinshill. It was fairly routine for Meakin, nothing out of the ordinary, on a busy main line. He telephoned Roger Kirkpatrick, signalman at Gretna Junction, the neighbouring box to the south, to say he was going to halt the 6:17 from Carlisle when it arrived. That's the local. Using some form of pre-arranged hand signals, Kirkpatrick relayed the message to James Tinsley, as the latter left his home close by. The 10-hour shift at Quintinshill officially started at 6 a.m. It was already well past that time, but Tinsley was not concerned about that, thanks to a strictly unofficial local arrangement. He wasn't expected there until 6:30. He was, however, still short of time, too short to walk from his home to the signal box. Running might have gone to work at 6:30, but the opportunity to be taken there by train was obviously the better option. He knew from Roger Kirkpatrick's signal the local train would be stopping at Quintinshill. Not for the first time, James Tinsley hopped aboard the engine of the 6:17 to begin his short trip from Gretna. The fact they were passing loops either side of the running lines at Quintinshill should have made the process of holding the local train there straightforward, but not on this occasion. Both loops had been allotted to freight trains, understandably given a low priority by Meakin as he juggled the competing demands arising from the traffic congestion on his section of the line. Arriving at 6:14, a late-running northbound goods service had been diverted by him into the adjacent loop to clear the main line for the passenger trains behind. The prospect of the express trains, also running late, being further delayed by the plodding progress of this heavy freight train of 45 loaded wagons behind a moderately powered 060 locomotive, was a determining factor. Meakin calculated that the freight train had insufficient time to reach Kirkpatrick, the next available passing place to the north, thus it had to be removed from the equation. At 6:28, Meakin had been presented with a further complexity. Nearing the signal box from the north was a train of empty wagons, returning from Grangemouth to the banks of Firth of Forth, to South Wales, after delivering coal to fuel the Grand Fleet at Scapa Flow. The signalman had been told that there would be no room for the train in Kingmore Marshalling Yard at Carlisle. It would have to wait at Quintinshill, possibly for a lengthy period, until space could be allocated for it south of the border. Meakin had the southbound passing loop at his disposal. He halted the empty coal train pending the shunting manoeuvre and would allow it to proceed into the safety of the loop. First, he had to deal with the arrival, a couple of minutes later, of the local passenger train from Carlisle. With both loops now soon to be occupied by the freights, an alternative means of shunting the local away from the northbound track, thus clearing a path for the first of the late-running expresses behind it to pass, would be needed. There was only one other option. After it drew to a halt, the train was reversed through the crossover connection from the northbound main line onto the southbound. The first express making for Edinburgh could now run through unhindered, while the local waited on the wrong line, facing north on a track carrying traffic for the south. It could then be returned to its rightful line and sent on to Kirkpatrick Station, where a further shunt would allow it to be passed by the second express. This was Meakin's plan. Although this was something of a last resort procedure, the heavy wartime traffic demands had forced it to use several times before at Quintinshill. The local train would be safe. The signalman would protect it. That was the theory. With the parley dealt with, George Meakin cleared the signal to allow the southbound train of Welsh coal empties to run into the adjacent passing loop. James Tinsley climbed the steps of Quintinshill signal box to relieve him. This would become the most momentous shift change ever undertaken on British Railways. It began smoothly enough, when as planned, the first of the two late-running overnight northbound expresses, the scheduled 11:45 from Euston to Edinburgh, cantered past the signal box at 6:38. A few minutes later, it ran past the Liverpool-bound troop train, which was now making much better progress, clattering by the signal box at Kirkpatrick Station, Quintinshill's neighbouring box to the north. At a speed the signalman there later recalled as very fast. With Quintinshill's George Meakin alerted to its proximity, the troop train then made good use of the favourable gradient from Bracken Hill summit. Was Francis Scott driving his hotchpotch of a train too fast as he raced towards Quintinshill? It's been estimated the troop train speed may have been exceeding 70 miles an hour on a falling gradient. It was tightly scheduled and running late. No doubt frustrated by the hold-up further north and the overtaxed railway system, Scott was trying to make up time. His engine could cope well enough, but the venerable vehicles lurching along behind it were an entirely different proposition. Another man under pressure, Scott was surely taking a chance. But the signals ahead were clear for him, so Scott pushed on. As he approached Quintinshill, having covered the 15-plus miles from Lockerbie in just 18 minutes, luck seemed to be with him. The box outer signal was also clear. Scott hurried on, rounding the curve which, along with the bridge beyond it, carrying a road across the railway, obscured his view from the signal box until he was almost upon it. As he swung under the bridge and prepared to run past the box and its loops, his vision along the line ahead, until then masked by the curve and the presence of the goods train in the northbound loop, cleared. Francis Scott was confronted with a train driver's nightmare scenario. Less than 200 yards in front of him, its blue paintwork gleaming in the bright sunshine, stood a massive locomotive facing his way, on the same set of rails, and there was no time for him to do anything about it. On the footplate of the local train, fireman George Hutchinson was about to take a snack when he happened to glance forward. To his horror, he saw the signal had been cleared on an approaching train from the north. The local was in its way. Naturally, he alerted his driver, David Wallace, better placed from his position to the left of the cab to see along the curve of the line. Wallace saw immediately that a train was bearing down on them at speed. It was less than a couple hundred yards away and closing fast. There was nothing he or Hutchinson could do to avoid a collision. They leapt from either side of the cab and raced for cover beneath the wagons of the freight trains and the loops. The footplate crew of the troop train had done their best to minimise the inevitable impact, reducing speed as far as was humanly possible. But at 6:49, amid the cacophony and screaming whistles and burning brakes, the heavily laden train hit with 120 tons of locomotive head-on, an estimated speed of around 40 miles an hour. Their engine was split from its tender, the former thrown to the right, the latter to the left. Scott and his fireman, James Hanna, both Carlisle-based railmen from Etterby, a mile northwest of the city, were killed instantly. Bunched together in their flimsy coaches behind the locomotive, the men of the 7th Royal Scots were left dreadfully exposed, defenceless against resultant mayhem. The leading vehicles catapulted over the top of the wrecked locomotive. The remainder, apart from the Caledonian vans at the rear, which remained on the rails, literally disintegrated in seconds. The great central coaches lay in pieces across both running lines. What had been a train more than 200 yards long was compressed into a mere 67 yards. The soldiers were jolted violently, one over the other, bombarded by rifles and haversacks falling from their luggage racks. Wooden splinters and flying pieces of metal were ripped into their flesh, potentially as lethal as anything any enemy force could have thrown at them. Several men died this way. Many, many more were injured. Others were trapped. By comparison, the local train escaped relatively lightly. It was thumped back more than 40 yards. It came off the rails but remained upright. Behind it, the back of the tender caved in and its coupling to the 4-coach train broke, setting free the sparsely filled vehicles, which ran back the best part of another 100 yards, safe from the catastrophic sequel that would soon emerge. But the front of the leading coaches smashed against the tender. It was here another 2 lives were lost. By any standards, this was a serious accident. Lives had been lost, although we shall never know how many deaths could directly have been attributed to the initial collision. Perhaps the toll of fatalities would have not been that high, relatively speaking. J.A.B. Hamilton suggested in his account that the majority of casualties might have been restricted to injury rather than outright death. It remains a moot point. What is certain is worse, is much, much worse, soon to follow. Immediately south of Quintinshill, the London-Glasgow sleeping car service was making up for lost time on the rising gradient thanks to the combined effort of the 2 powerful 440 locomotives at its head, aided, as the troop train had been, by a series of clear signals. In the cabs of the engines, the firemen spotted men running towards them, shouting and waving their hands in a manner which left no doubt that something was seriously amiss. Closest to the express was Douglas Graham, guard of the local train, who, shaking off the stunning effect of the collision seconds earlier, had, in his words, remembered that the down 6:05 express would be at hand. Commendably, Graham had rushed back to the line to stop it, but he added the sleeper was then too near. It was later estimated that Graham had covered 167 yards in just 40 seconds. The point has to be made that this was pretty good for a 46-year-old man. Whether he ran over the sleepers or not, more likely alongside, it was not recorded. Which of the 2 options he'd chosen? Neither would have represented an easy run. He was followed by James Benson and John Grieveson, driver and fireman respectively of the empty coal train. Their valiant dash was equally in vain. Driver John Cowper, in charge of the leading engine, number 140, did what he could once alerted by his fireman to the frantic signals of Graham and the men behind him. I immediately crossed the left of the engine and applied the Westinghouse brake with full force, he recalled later, as number 140 shot past exhausted Graham. Cowper looked up. He saw the wreckage in front of him. Andrew Johnston, driving the second locomotive, number 48, had slammed on his brakes in unison with Cowper, but the 2 drivers' brave, desperate bid to avert catastrophe was never going to be enough. There was simply not enough time. Less than 2 minutes after the first collision, the double-headed sleeper car express ploughed into the wreckage. Driver Cowper described the initial impact as not very hard. His engine had run into the crumpled leading coaches of the troop train strewn across the track, ahead of their own locomotive. Fortunately, the collision speed was reduced by Cowper's ability to slow his train from 50 miles an hour at the time he passed Graham to an estimated 40. But, he added, there was a great sound of splintering wood and breaking glass, followed by a very hard blow which almost brought us to a stand. His engine had struck a more substantial obstacle, the tender of the troop train's locomotive. It rode high into the air above a mound of twisted metal. Cowper himself was, as he later put it, buried up to the neck in the left-hand corner of my engine cab by the coals from my tender, with my back to the firebox. He revealed in the coroner's court, aware of the closest of the wrecked coaches was burning, and understandably fearful the fire might at any moment spread to his locomotive, he had resolved to gain my freedom by severing my imprisoned foot with a knife. Fortunately for him, such drastic action was averted. Stunned, considerably bruised and somewhat burned about the neck, Cowper was helped out of his cab by his fireman, David Todbunter, and driver Johnston. His wounds needed attention and were soon tended, along with those of many other casualties of the tragedy, in the field alongside the railway, allowing John Cowper to help other injured victims. A man in his 60s, his courage had been richly and deservedly praised. Driver Johnson and his fireman, John Graham, cushioned to an extent by Cowper's engine in front of them, escaped almost entirely unhurt from the collision. Behind their locomotive, the modern construction of the rolling stock, markedly stronger than the coaches of the troop train, offered protection to their occupants. Most of the express train's passengers were unhurt as a result, but for 7 people travelling in the train's front 2 coaches, there was no escape. The Quintinshill death toll was mounting. Horrifically, it was soon to rise much further. A 3-train collision immediately became a 5-train crash when piles of wreckage were spilled violently from either side of the running lines, smashing into the freight trains which had been held in the 2 passing loops. Then, an already dreadful scene of desolation rapidly descended into a virtual hell on earth. There ends the book section. It is not known how many died in the initial crash or how many more were killed by the impact of the sleeper train. Why? Because moments after the carnage appeared to have stopped, the high-pressure gas tanks of the troop train exploded. Fire ripped through the train as soldiers crammed together in overcrowded compartments, already scrambling to escape the wreckage, were engulfed by flame. Those unfortunate enough to survive the first 2 crashes were now being burned alive. Unconfirmed reports suggested officers who had got out of the wreckage after the first crash drew their pistols and shot dead some of the men in the burning coaches to save them from the flames. The fires raged for nearly 24 hours. The question everyone had was, how had this happened? In the moments leading up to the disaster, we know little of what actually happened in the box. I must quickly explain the signal box design was one where the levers and the block instruments were actually located against the back wall of the box itself, so the signalman operated with his back to the running line. George Meakin handed over to James Tinsley, who after signing in began to copy out all the notes that had been left for him to fill into the register. While this happened, George sat in the corner reading the morning paper. After the first sleeper train had passed, neither recalled giving the train out of section bell for the up goods. This cleared the line, of course, then for the troop train. Neither sent the code for blocking back inside home signal to protect the parley standing on the up line directly outside the box. They never placed a collar on the up home signal lever either to protect the local train. When offered the troop train, Tinsley accepted it and then offered it on again to Gretna. He cleared the line and cleared his signals. Only two things could now prevent what was about to happen. The fireman of the parley entered the box, ready to carry out what is called Rule 55. He has to remind the signalman of his presence and with the train standing where it was. He did not check the signals. He did not check the collar had been applied to the lever to protect his train. The only thing left now that could save them was for James Tinsley to look behind him through the window and see the train standing only feet away. He didn't. The story doesn't actually end there, but sadly my time with you today does. For all the details about exactly how this accident actually happened, who got blamed, and the apparent cover-up that took place in the weeks and months afterwards, I'm going to have to ask you to go and get yourself a copy of the book, The Quintin Seal Conspiracy, by Jack Richards and Adrian Searle. I will leave you with this. On that day, 230 people died. 246 were injured. James Tinsley later received 3 years of hard labour, and George Meakin was sentenced to 18 months in prison. Thank you for listening to Disaster Diaries with me, James Cullen. Tune in next month for another episode. Bye for now.
Well, now it's time for that exciting section of the show where we tell you all about where you can visit to hopefully win yourself some railway-related prizes. A quick update then from last month when we told you about a 1,000 subscriber giveaway that Peaks47 was running on his YouTube channel. A big congratulations goes to lucky winner Steve Harper, who won some super prizes such as weathered wagons, Metcalf kits and a host of other exciting things. A big thank you from Sam of Peaks47 to all those who entered, so why not subscribe to his YouTube channel and hit that bell so you don't miss any more exciting future competitions and upcoming content. Now, we've got 2 competitions to tell you about, and the first is from another YouTube channel called Barnabas Junction. Jason of Barnabas Junction does his YouTube Tuesday livestream every week at 8 PM, and he will be launching a competition during his July the 7th show. For you to be in with the chance to win a Hornby 10th Anniversary Visitors Centre wagon, then make sure you tune in live for details on how to enter. The second competition we have details of is one that's going to be launched on the West Hill Wagon Works YouTube channel on the 11th of July from 9 PM. There will be 4 00 gauge and 2 N gauge prizes up for grabs, so make sure you tune in live for full details on how you will be able to enter. Good luck to all of you if you are going to enter these competitions, and we will be announcing those lucky winners on next month's episode of Off the Rails.
We do hope you enjoyed this episode of Off the Rails with MRYCG. It's now time to say goodbye until next time. If you would like the chance to feature in future episodes or send us some feedback, then please send us an email to contactus@mrycg.com. Finally, I'd like to say many thanks to all of you who have listened in and those who have helped to make this podcast possible. So until next time, stay safe, stay well, and keep on modelling.
Thanks for tuning in, guys, to the Off the Rails by MRYCG. This is Sparky 107 all the way over here in Canada. Loving this show. You should too.